Okay, it looks like we are at 10 a.m. and we have a jam-packed agenda to be following, so we want to keep moving along. So my name is Hannah Bird. I'm the community educator here at the Hopland Research and Extension Centre, part of the UC Agricultural and Natural Resources Division. I'm going to turn over to Ali now, who's really been the driving force for all of this curriculum. Ali, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and get us set off?
Yeah, hi. So I'm Allie and I work at the Sierra Foothill Research and Extension Center. And so today we're going to be sharing with you the first of the lesson series from the Northern California Oak Woodlands. As I said previously in the email, these are all drafts, so any and all comments that you make today will help to inform what the final product looks like. We're hoping to have the information, the whole curriculum up on the website by the end of the month or early September. Hannah just started a poll for you all. So if you can just feel free to quickly answer that poll, just asking how confident you feel teaching your students about the natural and cultural fire ecology in the Oak Woodlands, just for us to gain a sense of how much or little this training has helped you all.
Just going to give them another minute, Ali, or another few seconds.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay. I think we're about there. I'm going to end that poll. Thanks to all of you who voted in that. That's great.
Great.
And we'll see that the majority of folks said that they feel like only slightly confident at this stage, which is a great place for us to start from.
So just before we dive into the plan for today, I just wanted to give everyone a chance to introduce yourselves. So if you can say your name, what you do, or you know, what you do in relation to why you decided to take this training, and the favorite thing you've done this summer. So I'll just finish my introduction with my favorite thing. I was able to hike this mountain that's kind of near the Donner Summit area called Old Man Mountain. That's been on my bucket list for a while. Just a really cool mountain that doesn't actually have a trail to the top. So that was a new thing for me, is figuring out how to just navigate on my own. So if anyone just wants to hop off of mute and just do a quick introduction, that'd be great.
Hello, my name is Carlotta. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes. We can.
Okay, cool. I work as a gardener, and I actually lost my place in the River and Ranch fire, the one that was over at the Hopland Extension Center too, but mine was in the Blue Lakes area. And anyway, I've been interested about fire and ecology of fire, and as I felt that strong power of fire at that time, for sure. And the training is mostly for my son too, because as he lost a place in the fire too, he's been questioning himself about fire, and I would like for him not to be afraid of fire, but the best it would be to be able to have the more knowledge about fire and know how to manage fire, especially around here where fire is part of the ecology. And so like last year, I invite Douglas Kent, the author of Firescaping, in Ukiah, because I felt that a lot of people are really afraid about fire. And as a gardener, I would like not to see desert around houses just because we are afraid and cutting down tree with no knowledge or no absolute idea of what we are doing. I think we need to know what how fire can be helpful, and how can we work with fire instead of be afraid. And the favorite thing this summer, I think, was just with this lockdown, it was mainly stay at home and enjoy my place and the people that I have around. So it's been a very interesting summer, and yeah, I appreciate really staying at home, close to home.
Hi, my name is Gay Henry, and I am a park docent at Anderson Marsh State Historic Park in Lake County. And I decided to take this training because not only have there been lots of fires in Lake County, but we see students if and when we can ever have them come back. And this seemed like a perfect thing to be able to not only help myself, but to help students. So we are volunteers, usually do the field trips, so that made perfect sense to me. And the favorite thing I've done this summer is to stay at home and watch a pair of pie-billed grebes build a nest, lay 5 eggs, hatch 4 of them, feed the babies right outside my window. So that's been really exciting. Yeah.
I better go next since I can just say what she said. My name is Henry Bernstein. I'm also a volunteer docent at the same state park. And we do lead field trips for 3rd and 4th, 5th graders. And I also lead public guided nature walks. A lot of interest in fires. My favorite thing is just for her favorite thing was take a bunch of pictures of this wonderful pie-billed grebe family right off our dock on a floating nest, quite an opportunity. So now I have to go through all these hundreds and hundreds of pictures to see if any of them are actually in focus. But that's what we're doing. Yeah.
I'll go next. Oh.
Go ahead.
Did I just talk over somebody? Okay. My name is Trisha Dunlap, and I am the STEM consultant for the Tuolumne County Superintendent of Schools office. So all 11 districts within Tuolumne County, which too is a fire-prone area. I decided to take this training. My background is in natural resource management. Came up here working for the Forest Service as a wildlife biologist, and then went into classroom teaching science a little bit after that. And my passion is definitely the outdoors and the Sierra Nevada ecosystem, as well as our foothills here. And I know fire is just, it's a part of our lives here, and our Fire Safe Council, we have been working to get clearing around our school sites, so our school sites can be used as safe havens for community in case of fire, as well as for our students. So when I heard that, I thought, well, there's going to need to be some education to go with that as they come in and they clear areas around our school sites. So anyway, so that's what I'm here, and my boss is great. I'm allowed to use 20% of my time on my passion projects, and this just might be it. Bringing Oak Woodland fire ecology to the classrooms where that fits their science standards. So there's that. And so in that, my passion being the Sierra Nevada and that type of ecosystem, I challenged myself this summer to hike someplace new at least 1 day a week. And I was able to do that. And I've done a lot of hiking in the Sierras. My old brain, some of them I thought I hadn't done, and then I went and I did. I'm like, oh yeah, when I was 20, I think I was here. So, so it was nice to kind of redo, and I was keeping a journal. So now I can remember where I've been as I continue to add to that journal. So I got to do a lot of new hiking, and it was a really great social distancing way to spend my time.
Great.
Hi, my name is Stephen Baptista. I am a high school science teacher for one of these smaller districts under Trisha. at Tioga High School. And I'm taking this training because this year, for the first time on our campus, we'll be teaching forestry and natural resource, and the fire science is a large part of that curriculum. And my favorite thing this summer that I've worked on is some remodeling projects around my house. I've had plenty of time since March. So.
Awesome, thank you.
I can go next.
Oh.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. My name is Stephanie Barrett, and I am a 4-H program rep in Riverside and San Bernardino counties. And of course, we're suffering right now with the apple fire that's burning quite a bit. And I wanted to take this because fire, I do a lot of project learning tree, and I think it really fits well with that, and I will probably use a lot of it with when I do that kind of programming. And my favorite thing that I've done this summer, unfortunately, it's really sad, but it's work, because that's pretty much all I've done because I can't go anywhere. And I've done a lot of virtual camps, and I've actually had a lot of fun doing them. So.
I am Haley. I work in Alameda County as a nutrition educator for preschoolers under the Cooperative Extension. And I wanted to take this because I just think that it's interesting. I'm not a native Californian. This is not really an ecosystem that I'm particularly familiar with. And so I kind of just wanted to learn more for myself. And then, of course, to be able to share resources like with my teachers who are preschool teachers, so that, you know, we're in the Bay, we're not as affected, but certainly there has been an impact from some of these fires, and students have questions at any age. So mostly to be able to share resources with my teachers.
I'm just going to mention that we have in the chat, I know we have a couple of people who are struggling to access the audio. So we have Karina. She's looking forward to knowing more about fire and how to share the information about fire and its benefits with diverse communities, including youth, elders, and people with disabilities.
Would anyone else like to do a quick introduction?
Hi, this is Terry McCartney with the Hopland Band of Pomo Indians. I'm going to do just chat because there seems to be a lot of feedback.
Okay, Terry, we can read it out. That's fine.
Okay.
And maybe just while that's taking place, it's worth just a reminder that this is being recorded. I know Ali sent out with her pre-information a form for folks just to complete. We're really keen to be sharing this so that other educators can access this as an online training. But in order to do that, we do need to make sure we have all of your consent. So if you haven't filled in that form yet, please do go ahead. And then is there anybody else who has not yet introduced themselves? We'd love to make sure everybody gets an introduction today.
Hi everyone, this is Mark Garrett. I'm a UC Cooperative Extension community educator in Mariposa County for prescribed fire for private landowners, as well as FireWorks program for the 4 counties around me. And I was also on the 4-H virtual camp with Hannah, and I'll be leading that fire activity this week. But I'll be using the Sierra Nevada FireWorks curriculum, which I assume we'll have to start doing an online platform for these teacher training workshops. So I'm just here to learn and see how we can go about moving those to the online platform. Oh, and the favorite thing I did this summer was paddleboarding up in Tenaya Lake in Yosemite and driving through the high country, and saw a little lightning caused fire up there that was managed for ecosystem functions. So that was great. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Mark. And just to share Terry's introduction with everyone, she is the EPA director for the Hopland Band of Pomo Indians. So we're happy to have her here today as well. Let's see, it looks like maybe a couple people haven't gone, but if you're not okay with sharing, that's okay too. Great, so we'll just, anyone else who hasn't gone? Okay. So just some notes about the training this week. Because time is limited, normally this training would be 2 days of 8 hours worth of teacher training. So to do it this way, we will end up going quite fast through some of the things. We just ask that you stay on mute unless you're talking. You know, as hosts, we might go in and help you with that because we have that ability. So you can feel free to ask questions either by unmuting yourself or in the chat. Hannah and I will be supporting each other. So if one of us is presenting, the other one will be watching the chat. And if it's a question that we think is worth saying to everyone, then we'll probably discuss it out loud. We will be circling back to things today. This unit has the most lessons, so it's 7 lessons. So it will take quite a bit of time to get through everything, but just know that some chunks of information we will be going over on Thursday and Friday. Specifically kind of the background on how to set up discussions around fire and how to set up ground rules as a class, kind of all the things that encompass trauma-informed education and how to make a safe space for students. We'll be going into that on Friday, and we'll also be going into the phenomena and action part of the lesson plan today, more on Thursday. So as we said, we're recording everything. We'll give you all access to those recordings. And we're going to try to end on time to honor everyone's obligations. But if you do want to stay on afterwards, Hannah or I are happy to stay on for more questions at the end. And let's see. So now, Hannah, do you know, was Mio planning to call in or Zoom in?
I'm just going to do a double check. I can't see her here yet. Mio, are you already with us, but unclear that you are? Okay, so I've just got in touch with Mio. Mio Marufo is planning to join us this morning to add some information about the cultural significance of fire. I think my suggestion, Ali, as we wait a little bit more for her, is maybe we can get started with some of the lessons and then move to Mio as soon as she joins us, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, certainly. We're just going to start right in going through some of the lessons. We set these up as a 5E learning cycle. So the first lesson is kind of just to set the stage. So one of the things you'll be doing with this lesson is having a discussion about ground rules for talking about fire. But you also, the other purpose of this lesson is to introduce students to the ways that local tribes used fire historically and today, and also some of their thinking around fire as such an important part of the landscape, as an important tool. Excuse me. So the outline for the lesson is pretty simple. So you just have that simple setting the stage discussion about ground rules for fire. And this would be something like, what are some classroom rules that we think might be important to follow as we talk about fire? And we'll go into this more on Friday. And then you'll be reading a local tribe's fire story. And we're trying to include as many different tribes, a story from as many different tribes in the Northern California oak woodlands as possible, so that you can choose one that's local to your area. And then have a discussion after that, then watch some of the videos that hopefully you all watched ahead of time on current uses of cultural burning practices, and then have another discussion after that. So it's pretty quick, simple, just introductory lesson. So we'll just kind of go through a little bit of that right now. This is one of the stories that's included with the curriculum. So if you all, I'll just give everyone a couple minutes just to read through this story, and then we'll talk about it a little bit. So I'll just give you 3 minutes. Okay, is everyone just about done reading this story? Okay, so now we are just gonna have a little bit of a discussion. So what do you think are some of the ways that tribes use fire? And you can just feel free to take yourself off mute and or type in the chat.
Well, I can say something just come in my mind. Some of the way, from some of the video that they were sent in the first email. Sorry.
Yeah.
Is it too? Is it better?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So they were about try to control pest for acorn, for example. So it was a part of like having fire to having a better crop of acorn in the next year. So try to control certain pests in a way that not tree were harmed, but there were a better crop of food. That was one of the come in my mind right away.
Yeah. Great. So the next question you would discuss with your students is, well, listening or reading to the story, what types of feelings do you think that the tribes had about fire? So, you know, thinking about like they have this really important story that talks about, you know, getting fire in such a way. What does that tell us about their feelings about fire, relationship with fire?
That they really valued it. It was a high value. The fact that they honored the color of the tail of the rabbit, even now. So, you know, the quote sacrifice that the rabbit made, that they honor that. So it's a very highly valued commodity.
Yeah, great. Great.
You know,
and a lot of the, go ahead.
You know, what occurs to me, let me get going here, knowing the students that I deal with, someone's going to ask, why did they think they had to steal it? Just ask, instead of asking to share it. because it's important. And something is going on that they felt that it was necessity to actually take it from the other people. So I'm not sure how that fits in, but someone's going to ask that. I'm not sure what the answer is, but I've been asked before.
Yeah, and what's interesting is a lot of the stories, even looking at different tribes' stories related to fire, is often it does involve stealing it. And when we were speaking with some of the tribal members, we had an initial day where we met, like a few different days where we met with different tribes, and someone was talking about just like that it was such an important resource that they had to work so hard for it. And I think that really just reflects how much skill and how much kind of dedication to like understanding how to use this really crucial resource in their landscape. Yeah, and maybe that's a question that you can ask Mio about when she's able to join with us. So what are some of the ways that you use fire currently?
We heat our house with fire.
Yeah, great.
We have a wood stove.
Yeah. So then the final question would just be, what do you think that fire plays an important role on the landscape? And then after that question, you'd head right into watching the videos that you all watched about the cultural burning practices. And then you'd have another follow-up discussion with students, just asking them, what are some of the reasons given about why fire is important? What are some of the ways that they are using fire in the video? And what are your thoughts on bringing back burning practices? And so this can be a very, this is definitely a time to just kind of open the floor to students. Some of them, the idea of intentionally starting fires might be something new. So just giving them a chance to really talk out these ideas and kind of get a feel for how they feel within this discussion.
I'd like to say that it's not only something, essentially starting fires is not only something new, it's something with a high negative value for these children. They've been taught that intentional fire starters are bad people to these kids. And we really need it's important to recognize that, to start from where they are and to try to move to a more neutral space before you jump right into all this stuff.
And the Smokey the Bear message really worked. That was.
Also, the fires we had in Lake County really worked too. When they actually caught someone who was an arsonist, trust me, no one was thinking positively about it. So.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that having time to talk, taking some time to talk about this skilled, thoughtful intention of starting fires versus, someone doing it with negative intentions. So there are many people who start fires because they have a goal in mind. They've taken proper precautions to know that that fire is won't behave in a way that can harm people. Just kind of thinking about some of those differences and talking them through with students, because as you said, Henry, for all my life I can remember is just, Smokey the Bear, all fire is bad, put it out.
Right.
But now we're kind of coming to an understanding in science that might have been a harmful paradigm to think about. And so just kind of opening those lanes of discussions with students is really important.
Ali, can I just raise some of the things that have been in the chat? I missed a little bit, so maybe you've covered these already. Have you already shared some of the updates from the chat?
Oh, no, I have not.
So I see Stephen mentioned clearing old brush for new growth of resources they utilize for production of baskets and medicines. Mark, beneficial plant species for basket making, medicines and food. Trisha, staying warm, cooking, honoring fire, it's important for survival. And then I think this was referring to how it all, how fire benefits us today, the wood burning stove. I just wanted to share those from the chat.
Yeah, great, thank you.
I have a interruptive.
Go ahead.
Remind me what grade level this was written for, what grade band?
Yeah, so this is a middle school. So the initial FireWorks curriculum was developed for, there's a section for elementary, middle, and high school. And so we focused on adapting the middle school version so that it'd be the most useful if teachers wanted to adapt up or adapt down.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so next up is the adopting a plant, animal, or fungus. And so in this lesson series, each student is assigned a plant, animal, or fungus that they will be in charge of presenting out to the class about. So you can see some of the example presentations in this photo right here. And so you all were also assigned plant, animals, or fungus to teach us all about. So if there's anyone who was able to do that and feels comfortable sharing about their plant, animal, or fungus, you can just take, a minute or two to talk about a little bit about your species.
Okay, I'll go.
Great.
Hi, you probably know some of my sisters. My name is Bobby Sir Bug, and I want to tell you about a plant I know. It's native to California, and it can be a tree or a shrub. It has leaves that are long, pointed, and are glossy, dark yellow-green. The leaves have an interesting smell. This plant likes to grow near water, like a creek or pond. You'll often find it in the oak woodlands and chaparral around Clear Lake. People use the seeds, fruit, and leaves for eating and medicine. Many animals also eat the leaves, seeds, and twigs. It also provides cover for deer, bears, birds, and insects like me. Fire can sometimes help it grow again, so I can come back after a fire. Have you ever smelled a bay laurel leaf? There you go.
Nice work. That's awesome. And with these ones, it's really fun. So if you're doing this unit in a classroom or over a setting that you have the students for a longer time, it's really great. You can just throw a couple of these into each lesson and kind of give students a chance to just spread them out throughout the week with the presentations. Okay, who else completed a species?
Well, I can go, I guess. I have the yellow star thistle. Ouch. Okay, so it's sharp. This is not native to California. It came from Southern Europe in the lands around the Mediterranean, which is probably why it grows so well here, because we have a very similar Mediterranean climate in California. In summer, it's often the only green plant you see growing on a brown hill. So how does it do that? Well, after it starts growing, it doesn't send up this thing right away. It sends down a long, deep taproot into the ground. And then when all the water goes away and all the other plants turn brown, it grows this high because it can reach way down to where the water still is. That's why it's so successful here. In Southern Europe, where it came from, it's held down. It's controlled by a lot of beetles and butterflies and other insects we don't have here. So here it sort of runs wild all over the place. It causes a lot of problems. If horses eat it, they can get sick, and interferes with the plants that we want to grow here for grazing, for cattle. And also it tends to crowd out all the other plants that actually belong here that are favorable, that help birds and other wildlife. So what happens when there's a wildfire? Actually, it can help this plant. This plant burns down, but there's so many seeds in the soil. They survive. Now everything is clear, and they can come up all over the place again and cover the hill, and it's the only thing growing there. However, a fire at the right time can prevent this year's seeds from forming if the fire happens at the right time. Unfortunately, there's lots of seeds still in the ground, so it takes years and years of repeated fire and fire and fire before it wouldn't come back. But there is a plus. The plus is honeybees love it. And I think it makes the best honey in the world. So that's the start of this.
Great. Thank you so much. Who else? Did anyone else complete their species description? Stephanie, go ahead.
Okay, I did mine, but I did it as like a computer video that I made. So I'm going to share my screen.
Great.
Okay. Because I'm learning how to code too, so. All right, can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Let me see if I can push play. It was playing just a minute ago, now it's not. Okay.
All right.
All right, that's it.
Wow, is that the sound they?
Yes.
Is that the sound they really
I have
make?
no clue. That was the weak sound that this program had. So
It's cute though. That's great.
That was absolutely lovely, Stephanie. I just want to say, you know, one thing we're going to be thinking about as we go through these lessons is how they can be adapted to remote learning situations. And I think that's an excellent example of how students could actually use some of their other skills.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much, Stephanie. That was amazing.
Thank you.
Okay, who wants to follow up? Stephanie.
I'll go ahead and follow up. I did something sort of similar. Hopefully it works. Can you guys see that all right?
Yeah.
All right. What's up? I'm Gregory, California ground squirrel. I like living in grasslands and oak woodlands where I can keep an eye out for my predators. You know them, rattlesnakes, hawks, bobcats. Oh my! They aren't the only ones who depend on me for their survival either. Salamanders and burrowing owls like to use my crib when I outgrow it. Word in the branches is I'm kind of a keystone species, if you will. Anyway, my homie's been sleeping during the hot weather, but I skipped out on this summer. Man, I've been so bored though. So I just been eating and collecting food. I'm kind of hungry. I'd go for some acorns. Those are my favorite. I like me some grass too. Did you know 200 of us can eat as much grass as a cow? Well, I do eat for a few. Wink, wink. Anyway, I gotta run. Farmer Dan just laid some drip hose. Boy, do I love chewing on that stuff. Can't help myself. And his tree roots, so delicious too. Just gotta stop eating them to the point that I kill the tree. Man, I keep tanking them out. Hashtag sustainable practices. Well, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. All right. How do
I can stop your sharing. That was awesome. I saw there's like a little app name in the bottom, and I'm curious, what's the name of that app? Because I feel like actually for virtual learning, like passing that along to teachers to have their students do for their species is a great idea.
Well, called Talker. I put it in the chat. That's how it's spelled. So you can actually import any picture of any animal, and then you just put the dots on the eyes and mouth and eyebrows, and then when you talk, it automatically synchronizes. So
that is amazing. Thank you so much for sharing.
Allie, would you make sure we all get the name of that app before this week is over?
Yeah,
I heard him say it, but I have no idea of what he said. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so it's in the chat. So if you click on the chat, you'll be able to see it in there.
Let me check in the chat.
But I agree, Gay.
LKR, there it is.
That is something we'll try and put together as a list of resources that have come up through the week so that we can share those out with you afterwards.
Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone else have a species they'd like to share about?
Well, I did do my homework, but after those first 4, I don't want to share.
Oh,
I didn't like do anything exciting because I wasn't sure if we could share screens and any of that. So I just have a regular old speech, so I'll make it quick. Anyways, I bet you guys can guess mine when I tell you it is the state bird of California. What do you think?
Quail.
The quail, the California quail, that's right. So it lives in the oak woodland, and the reason it loves oak woodland is because the shrubs are used as cover for predators and also shade from heat. And also there's open space for finding food, and their food includes seeds, leaves, flowers, berries, including the berries of poison oak, which makes me think, do they help the spread of poison oak by then pooping out the seeds in those berries, or do they eat it and then the seeds don't resprout? I don't know. So I'm not sure if I like it or not yet. And they do eat some insects. So it seems to me like they're an omnivore. They nest on the ground, and I was surprised to find out that the females can lay up to 16 eggs in a clutch at a time. And quite often, scientists have found up to 30 eggs in a nest, but females can share their nest. They're kind of a community. They raise their young as a community. So more than one female will share a nest, and then they all raise the hatchlings together, which helps with the survival rate. Kind of wish I had other women in the house when I was raising my children. Anyway, they are predated upon by most other carnivores: skunks, raccoons, bobcats, hawks, owls, At one time, they believe the populations were much larger here in California, with like 1,000+ quail in a covey. We don't now. We can see up to 75 in a covey, so their population is stable. But they do believe it was a lot larger. Fires, they can escape most fires because they have flight, at least flighty behavior with them. They don't fly far, but they can they're fast enough to get away from fire. A low, not too hot burn actually increases their food supply by increasing that open space. And then the wildflowers and grasses that come back afterward are a food source. And if there's too many shrubs, because there's been no fire through an area for a long time, that will actually hurt their population because of the lack of food, even though there's more shelter. I have one picture, see if I can get it out of my John Muir Laws book. So there's the California quail. That's it.
Yeah, can I go back to Stephen's presentation and share a recent meeting between a rattlesnake and a brown squirrel at our park? It really is kind of interesting. Let's see if I can get it here. Here it is. Oops. Isn't that amazing? Yikes.
It's not sharing on the screen.
Oh, it's not sharing. Well, let's try it again.
There you go.
There it is.
It's starting now.
Look at that. There's a meeting between a ground squirrel and a rattlesnake.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Did
wow,
you take this picture?
It was taken by another volunteer at the park who was actually cleaning. This is an old historic barn on the left there, and we were cleaning shrubs and sort of weeds around the area, and she looked down and there it was, sitting there out in the open, just digesting, I suppose. But I never believed that was there you go. So there's one of the problems you can run into if you're a ground squirrel.
That was amazing. That's like, ugh. If I saw that, definitely be a mix of repulsion and interest.
Kids love pictures like that. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
Adults go, ooh, but kids really, they think it's a wonderful thing to see. So.
Well, you don't know if you feel sorry for this ground squirrel or happy for the rattlesnake. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the discussion usually.
I'm mixed.
Exactly. Who's on whose side here? And usually a little both. So.
He's definitely going to go take a nap after that meal.
Yeah, it's going to be a while.
I guess.
Like I tell my kids, squirrels are food. I mean, that's what they're here for.
Yeah, I think we're all food, really.
Yeah.
Okay, does anyone else have anything else to share?
I can do mine.
Do you have a species?
Yeah, so I did cows. I'm going to share my screen. It's not exciting.
It's okay.
How do you know?
Because it's PowerPoint.
Well, we can still get excited. I could get excited by a PowerPoint. Come on.
So I just I was thinking 1 minute, very quick summary. So cows are not native. They're brought to California for leather, milk, and meat. They live in valleys or oak woodlands near freshwater and green grass. They will avoid steep mountains, but they'll climb hills. It's set specifically for a salt lick. They eat grass, clovers, alfalfa hay, or protein supplements, which can be provided by the ranchers. And there's particular set of herbs that grow after fires, which are nutrient dense and they really like. And then of course they enjoy a salt lick, and the ranchers can sort of place them strategically to lead them to areas where they want them to graze. Predators will usually avoid adult cows. Of course, they'll go after the calves. And as a group, they avoid areas where there are wolves. So it seems like they're afraid of wolves no matter what. They're usually born in the fall with the rains and the greener grass. They're weaned around 6 months. So they'll go from milk only to milk with a little bit of grass and then grass. Young females, heifers, will be kept around in order to mate and have more calves. And they play a role in fire because they will eat dry grasses and trample plants, which will help prevent fires from starting, or if they start, it will help prevent them from spreading, or if they're spreading, it will help prevent them from burning as hot as they might. And also, if plants are trampled, then they won't necessarily reach up to the trees. And they can't really escape the fires themselves. They depend on humans to escape fires, and then also light prescribed fires for that new growth and those herbs that they really like, that are nutrient dense. That's it. Short and sweet.
Nice work. That is great.
What are those nutrient dense herbs?
It didn't have a name in the summary. It just said herbs.
Oh.
I imagine there's a variety, and probably it's documented somewhere, but it wasn't in my little summary.
Okay.
Yeah. Things like clover and other similar, just general forbs. Yeah. Okay, anyone else?
I did have the woodpecker. Sorry, my cabin is a little messy and I didn't
That's okay.
share my super messy area. But I had the woodpecker and and I didn't do any PowerPoint presentation, sorry. And so, but the thing that came in mind right away with this bird was I don't know if you can see it, The Secret of Oak Woodlands by Marion Child, and she has a great picture of the woodpecker. And so I read this chapter a few times, and I found some info that you already shared. And what interested me is in this part is the social lifestyle that they have, and how they share food and shelter and place, and how the importance for these species are all the dying oak. They can be, as you call like granary oak, and how we felt that how beautiful is that oak. It takes a really long time to grow and a really long time to die, and that when it's dying can give a shelter and a place to store acorn for this bird, and also food for other insects, and it's very interesting that some people what people can see as like something that need to be cut down because it doesn't have any life anymore, how can sustain life still, and the woodpecker use this tree as a part of a food storage, and the fact that they are social, and they also have this way of all the female can be part of growing and taking care of or not only of their children, but also the other little bird. And another thing was the fact that Kate Marion Child talked about how she noticed how they can predict storm, and somehow why the intense hammering can predict storm. And the other things that the acorn woodpecker does not necessarily eat acorn, but just he store acorn so he can eat the insect and fly insect, but also the wait a second, the weevil and the larvae that infest the acorn. And the other amazing thing that they eat, that they store every single acorn in every hole, and it's pretty amazing. It's a long work. And the nest sharing, and the fact that sometimes local tribe in certain year where there was not enough food were actually looking for those oak granary for having those acorns. So it is amazing. And also like how those acorn, their hard work sometimes was steal by other animal like squirrel or that's all. Sorry for the short presentation, And
no, that was great. Thank you
okay.
so much, Carlotta.
Thank you.
Great. So that's the adopt a species lesson. So one of those lessons that can definitely work well. You could imagine doing that virtually with your students. We did it for a 4-H summer camp not that long ago, Hannah and I, and it worked really well virtually. So definitely one of those lessons to keep in your back pocket for this time. So moving on, lesson 3 in the learning cycle is called Mystery Trees. And so just another lesson to really introduce students to the dominant tree species in the oak woodlands, and also to teach them how to use the dichotomous key. So I'm sure most of you have used a dichotomous key before. So you have your specimen or your pictures of your specimen, and you start on the left and you answer the questions yes or no and move towards the right. And whenever you end up at the end of your dichotomous key, that tells you what species you have. So this key wouldn't necessarily work if you keyed out every random tree that you saw in the oak woodlands, but just works for these particular species. So if you're doing this in a field trip setting, you could go out and label trees for students to use the dichotomous key on. The curriculum kits, which I haven't talked a ton about yet, but this curriculum does have a lot of materials, and as part of our grant, we've made 11 curriculum kits that are placed, that will be stationed throughout Northern California. So we can send out a resource, an email that includes a list of where they are to you all. But it also, the curriculum kits will include pieces of each of these different trees. So if, say you are a classroom teacher and you don't have access to many of these trees near your site, there'll be leaves, tree cookies, seed examples that you can set out around your classroom to kind of give students a more tactile feel of things. And then the other way you can do this lesson is just by using pictures online. So you can do this lesson in kind of a virtual setting just to get students familiar with some of their local trees. So if anyone wants to use the dichotomous key to try and key out which species we have here, you can feel free to do that. So you would just start on the left. Does it have needle-shaped leaves? Yes or no? These ones don't look like needles, so I would go no and follow that train down. Any guesses for what species we have here?
Looks like Valley Oak on the right there, I guess.
Yeah. And so one thing, there is like the lobed part. You might have to describe to students what lobes are. So lobes are the part that looks like your ear. So these ones have rounded lobes. Okay. What species do we think this is? We might have already learned a little bit about it.
I really wish I could have gone and picked some berries or some flowers.
Yeah, the flowers are definitely long gone from the California Bay.
And I haven't been walking out lately, so or I would have gone out and maybe done some harvesting. So instead, I robbed my cooking area and said, okay, they still smell like bay.
Yeah.
I would probably have enough if I had some kids. I would probably soak them a little bit to get them a little softer, and then pass them around and let them tear it to feel how tough it is, and also then to get a chance to smell.
Yeah. So that was the bay. So this one's next. And for the needles?
Or in clusters of
needles,
3.
Yeah, there are 3. And then the grayish tint part has to do with the needles.
Right.
Never trust the photo or the color and know what you're looking at.
Like the
Grayish?
foothill pine.
Yeah, this one's a So this one's the foothill pine.
Yeah, the tree looks like a foothill pine. It's split.
Yeah, that's how I can tell the split.
Yeah. Last but not least, I'm sure many of you know this species just by look.
Manzanita.
Yeah.
Madrone.
Madrone. Yeah.
Boy, 2 years ago, last year or 2 years ago, they were just fruiting everywhere.
Okay. So now I'm going to hand it off to Hannah, and she's going to present a little bit about the next lesson, Bark and Soil, Nature's Insulators.
Thanks, Ali. That's great. And thanks for guiding us through those lessons so far. Just a reminder, if anybody has questions as we're going through, feel free to stick them in the chat. We'll either respond to them there or at least we'll follow up afterwards. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And give me a second. Okay. So, yeah, the lesson I'm going to be focused on is the one about nature's insulators. So the goal, each of the lessons you'll see in the packets, you know, has a goal outlined. It's really well structured so you can understand how it's of value. And the goal is to increase students' understanding of heat transfer and the usefulness of insulation to slow the process of heat transfer. So we're not obviously just talking about plants for this. We're also talking about ourselves, our bodies, how we keep warm or cool down by wearing the right clothes on any given day, and even our homes. So I don't know, just looking at this picture, does anybody want to tell me something they might have noticed about heat transfer here?
The two buildings to the right are warmer because there's no snow on the roof.
Yeah, that's right. Anybody want to give an idea of why maybe they're warmer? Why there's no snow on that roof? So it ends up being all about their insulation.
If there's no insulation in the attic, you're going to get
it. That's
snow
right.
on the roof.
That's right. So that heat is traveling up and just going straight out through the roof for them. So, you know, it's great to just share with students, you know, other ways that insulation is being used. But of course, for our plants, many of them are using insulation or have insulation by having thick bark like this redwood tree. And then, of course, other trees like madrone, manzanita, you see that very fine peeling bark. So that's a question to think about. Okay, so how are those trees then adapted to fire in different ways? So these lessons, you've probably already noticed, really couple well with the adopter species that we've just done. And if you work through this lesson, you might want to call on those students who were trees to help think about the different kinds of bark. There are two key experimental questions that the students are asked. And if you're looking at this lesson at all, I think a great thing just to guide us through right now is the handout sheet. So there is a student handout sheet, and it's worth just taking a look at that. No problem if you don't have it right now though. So the two questions are, can thick bark insulate the phloem, cambium, and xylem of a tree from a fire's heat? Of course, you may need to check in with the students about their understanding of those terms, and also make sure that they appreciate just how valuable that cambium is and how once heat gets through to there, once it gets damaged, that's a major problem for the tree. And they can also consider, can soil insulate seeds and roots from fire's heat? So the experiment that we're going to do, the students can actually choose if they wish for it to be a tree or soil that they're investigating. And then they can transfer their knowledge that they've learned through the experiment to the other thing and think about how insulation plays a role in both. But for us today, we're going to focus on a tree. So when doing this activity, in the box, in the toolbox, in the kit, there is only one set of activity materials. So you're going to want to do this either as a demonstration, which obviously works quite well for remote, or if you were in person, you might want to have it as a station with a number of other stations. And that works quite well with some of the other fire physics lessons we'll do tomorrow. And as I mentioned, it's a really great fit with that Encyclopedia of Species, the adopter species. So let's just take a look at the materials that we're going to be using. So we have a coffee can, like quite a big coffee can. This is our tree trunk that we're simulating. And we can add in different amounts of padding to make the insulation for the bark on the outside here. We have a temperature probe right here, which we attach just to the surface of the tree, but underneath what we're going to put on is our simulated bark. Then we have the recorder right here. It's going to tell the temperature. There's a few other things you're going to need. A hair dryer is what we use to create the heat. We use a ruler just to measure. We always make sure it's 20 centimeters away that we have our heat source. And also you need a timer. So, you know, somebody's cell phone, or if they have a watch, or if you want to make sure you have something that can measure seconds, that's really important too. So one of the nice things about this is that you can actually, once you've explained the project a little bit, the experiment to the students, they can hypothesize what they think is going to happen. So again, just to express to you all, what we're going to do is we are going to heat up that pretend tree trunk with a hairdryer, and we're actually going to heat it for 30 seconds. And then we are going to keep measuring the heat for a full 4 minutes. So we'll start measuring the heat from second 0, from the very beginning with the hairdryer on. We'll stop the hairdryer at 30 seconds, and then at 4 minutes, we'll stop recording the temperature differences. And we're going to check the temperature every 15 seconds. So on the next slide, I've got my graph here ready for some data. I was wondering whether you guys, you should be able to use the annotate function. I think on my screen, it normally pops up when I go up to the very top of the screen, but different computers have different things. So if you can use the annotate function, if you would like to put in a line on the graph of what you think is going to happen as the hypothesis. So I'll give you guys just a few minutes to do that. Please go ahead and put a line on the graph. You can see on the graph here, we've got temperature coming up the side. We're starting at about 25 degrees. That's what temperature my room is right now. And we have the heat turning on at 0 seconds, turning off at 30 seconds. And then this is the full 4 minutes all the way along. Excellent.
Are we able to annotate even though you're in screen share? I mean, obviously people are doing it somehow.
I believe so, but I do think there is mixed functionality for different computers. So don't feel like you're lacking if you can't do it or you're shirking your duty.
Okay.
Maybe I can, but I don't know how.
Need to.
Yeah, so up at the top, if you kind of hover your thing at the top, there'll be a tab that says View Options, and then
I see that.
A drop-down thing that says Annotate.
Ah.
Oh, View Options. Okay, there we go. Annotate. Ah, excellent. Well, I can pick one. Draw.
Now, I have a question about the experiment. Right now, what are you using other than just the can? Do you have any insulator thing in there? Or
that is an exceedingly good question that I should have told you guys, because it's going to be hard to make a hypothesis when I haven't told you which one it'll be. Thank you for putting that out. So, you know, just for a practice run this time, I'm just going to do it with no insulation, but thank you for clarifying that. That's really crucial. So,
and so the insulation that you use is just batting, like batting that you would use for like a making a quilt. So you just put on, so you would run the experiment a few different times, one with just a piece of fabric, and that would kind of represent that thin peely bark of the madrone. The second trial run, you would do 5 layers of batting, and then the final trial run, you would do 10. Today, we're just going to do 1 trial run for the sake of time, but we'll show you an example graph of what it would look like with all the others too.
Yeah, that's great to see thanks for putting your hypotheses on here. This is for me a little bit of a test run of seeing how this works as well. So you can work with your students in advance, and I think it's great for them to have an experience of putting a hypothesis onto a graph. Also worth making sure they're aware that doesn't matter if you're wrong. This is not about checking that your hypothesis is right. This is about coming up with an idea of what we think and then testing that and seeing what we have when we do our experiment. So great, now we've got those on there. I'm just going to remove all of those lines. Thank you very much, everybody. So what you guys were suggesting is that, okay, while the heat's on, we are going to see that heat rising quickly up to about 45 degrees maybe, and then we're going to see it, and there were different people had different senses of whether they think it will decline, the heat will leave quickly, or whether it's going to kind of decrease more slowly. So that's really useful, really helpful. Okay. So I'm going to take us over now to, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to take us over to our experiment. Just bear with me. So for doing this, we do need, I'm looking for a few volunteers to help out to try and make this as active as we can do online. So we need a timer. That is somebody who is going to call out every 15 seconds. And there is one additional job, so it's a tricky one. Not only do you have to call out every 15 seconds, but you also need to tell us at second 0, heat on, and at second 30, heat off. So who feels confident in calling out 15-second intervals all the way up to 4 minutes and telling us heat on and heat off at 0 and 30?
I can do that.
Trisha, thank you so much. That's great. Okay. So we've got Trisha doing that. I'm going to be the heat source. That's something we can't do remotely. So I've got my hairdryer here. I have my tree right here. At the moment, it's just got that very, very thin layer. It's actually just some paper on it, and it has the probe on top of that. If I were doing it with insulation, as Ali said, I have batting, which I would be putting around it. And I also have further cloth, which could go around as the final layer of bark. So you can change up the experiment for what you need. But for now, we're just doing the very, very thin layer, as if it really had no bark. And then I need somebody else who could keep an eye. I'm just going to shift our screen a little bit. So this is our temperature measurer. Could somebody, well, in fact, could all of you guys, whenever we hear 15 seconds called, could you write down the temperature that you are seeing on there? So we should be doing that at 15-second intervals for an entire 4 minutes. Okay. I think we're feeling good. So I'm just going to check, first of all, that I'm 20 centimeters away. There we go, 20 centimeters. Here's my hairdryer. So Trisha, you want to call out when you're ready, and I'll turn it on.
Okay, heat on. Or not.
It's heating.
Oh, it is?
It's too hard for me to hear. Is it off yet?
15. $30 seconds off. $15. 15, 15, 15, 15, 15.
All right, Trisha, for the
That's
purposes
2
of,
minutes.
that's great. You know what, for the purposes of modeling today, I hope it's okay with you guys since we've got so much packed in that I'm going to call it quits at that point. And I'm going to do that thing that TV presenters do where they cut to one they did earlier. Okay, so I'll show you some of the results.
Oh, can we eat the cake afterwards?
That's right.
The cake
But,
is done.
I mean, so one thing I've just noticed doing this remotely, which might be of value to you guys, is make sure your timer gives you a visual symbol when you turn the heat on and off, because I couldn't hear what time it was. So that's maybe something that's useful to have for the future. Okay, so I'm just going to go back here and get my screen shared again. Hang on a second.
This would also be the time to ask the kids, what do you notice? What do you wonder? Just that simple science
Absolutely.
thing be prior to, you know, showing like all the data.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that couples quite neatly with that hypothesis that they put there, like, was it different to what they were expecting? So this is just an example of carrying this out. So as you see here, this is an experiment where they did it with 0 layers, 5 layers of batting and 10 layers of batting. You can see on the graph here, this is the 0 layers of batting. So the temperature was increasing quickly and then fairly quickly dissipated as well. And you were almost getting back down to the original temperature in that 4 minutes. But with the 10 layers of batting, the temperature did not rise very much at all, but then it did take a long time to dissipate. So it took a while before you saw that change in temperature again. So that's something that sometimes surprises students. Of course, running science experiments with students in the classroom or online always comes up with things you might not expect. So there's some great opportunities for discussion there. Let's just see. Then at the end of this, in their sheet that they're completing as their student sheet, there are some good questions that help them to bring their knowledge back into the context. So can thick bark really protect a tree? And can soil really protect underground seeds and roots? And they're asked to answer both of those questions, regardless of which model they did, because the same information obviously is very valid for them. So what do you guys think? What do you think? Do you think thick bark could protect a tree?
Yes.
And one of the premises that we're going on here is, of course, that bark could not burn, which isn't necessarily true. But that for the purposes of this investigation, it is something that can be discussed further with the students of what makes bark less flammable than perhaps other things. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing now.
And I think,
yeah,
I don't know if this comes in the background prior, but for middle school students, they don't necessarily know the anatomy of a tree, that the living part is inside the bark area, and really that's what's being protected. So is that in the lesson somewhere, or is that something you bring out later?
So it's not specifically in this lesson, but it is in there's written information to give you advice pre-lesson. And I also think it fits in quite nicely with the project learning tree lesson that does go through the parts of a tree, and we'll share that as well. Ali, would you have anything to add there? Oh, you're on mute.
I'm on mute. Sorry. Yeah, that's good to know that that might not be part of their standards yet, because then we will go in and just add something really quickly, just kind of a basic like introduction of tree, just a quick, you know, here's the tree.
I mean, it's nice that they figure it out themselves. So I don't know, the PLT activity, I know the one I'm thinking of, it just kind of tells them about the parts of the tree. But if there's, which may be all it needs in this.
This is really an important point, because when we do an oak sort of lesson, when we do a field trip, you know, and I will tell you right now, the students have no idea that a tree isn't a solid piece of wood. They have no idea about trees at all, zero. And it really, I mean, and so I think that we cover that first, and their eyes just get gigantic. They've never seen a tree and thought about a tree inside. They think it's just one big piece of wood. And so I think for a park protecting it, it'd be crucial almost to first explain what the little tent, how delicate and unprotected it would be without bark. And so when you're showing the first thing without the bark, if they know this is going to be really bad, you know, I mean, bark's important. It's not just a science experiment, because it's tender life under there is about to get wiped out. So.
Thank you for that input, because one thing I think Ali's mentioned a few times now, we are still in the stages of making you know, kind of final tweaks to these lessons. So it's super useful to get feedback like this. Right. We're also still getting advice from our tribal advisory group. So, you know, some of those species lessons that you've seen, we're still developing, we're still tweaking. Right. It's definitely worth bearing that in mind.
And at middle school, they do know
Hannah,
the 6 plant parts, you know, fruit, stems, leaves, flowers, roots, and whatever it is. Anyways, they know that, and they know the basic function of that, but just somehow bringing out their preconceptions about how a tree grows, where the growing part is, what's happening on the inside, and really that the bark, you know, maybe show pictures of trees that are still living that don't have bark. Yeah. And ask them why, how can this tree be still living, you know, and then just kind of bring out their thinking and their understanding of what a living tree needs. And honestly, bark isn't one of them. You know, it doesn't have to have bark. That's just the protection layer. And then you can get into all of the, anyway.
So yeah, no, that's really useful, Trisha. And Mark, did you have something to add too?
Yeah, in the Sierra Nevada lessons episode, or lesson 9 is called Tree Parts and Fire. And that has the living tree diagram with the word bank, and it has all the cambium, the inner wood, the phloem, the roots and seeds and xylem and things like that. So
that's a really good point. Thank you, Mark. So coupling those lessons would make a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yeah. Or at least referring to it in this Oak Woodland one, saying if your students don't know, go here. Yeah.
And I can think of about 5 PLT activities that could go with this. That, you know, one where you assign the parts to the students and they all kind of get together and act like the tree parts. That's a really effective one.
Hard to do virtually, but I don't know how that would look.
You could, because they all say, like, there's a little chant that they say. Yeah. So you could have them all standing where they need to and then chanting at the same time. It would be like chaos. But it would sounds
good
cool.
To me.
Yeah.
Good chaos. Yeah.
I'm just thinking, I taught middle school for years. It's all about chaos and just helping to coordinate it.
Yeah, great. So we're just going to continue right along. So the next lesson is the fire history in Oak Woodlands. So the objectives of this lesson being for students to understand how scientists learn about historic fire patterns and to learn about the historic fire patterns of the Northern California Oak Woodlands. So fires, this is obviously the campfire. Fire didn't always look like this in the Oak Woodlands, big, catastrophic, high intensity, you know, definitely like moving quickly, changing quickly. that kind of thing. So yeah, so we're just gonna kind of quickly go through this lesson as I would with students, just have like a little discussion, and then we'll actually go into breakout rooms, and then you all will present some of the things that you read about in your pre-work. Okay, so if it was your job to manage a park or valley or landscape with big patches of oak woodlands, what would your goals be for that patch of land? So you can either
Or do we answer this? Do we answer this as though we're middle school kids? Or?
Yeah, exactly. We're just going to kind of quickly go through, so maybe have one or two people answer for each question. So you can just unmute yourself, or if you prefer, you can type it in the chat and Hannah can read it aloud.
Biodiversity.
Biodiversity, awesome.
Yeah. My middle school kids would say motorcycle paths. And
okay, motorcycle paths.
Places to play for recreation.
Okay, places to play for recreation. Awesome. These are all really good
I'm
goals.
gonna put a lake. I'm gonna put a lake in my oak woodland.
Oh, nice, nice. Okay, so suppose
one more thing was like the control of non-native grass. That would be one of the main issue in oak woodland too.
Yeah. So suppose one of your goals is to keep the oak woodlands healthy. What does that mean? What does, keeping an ecosystem healthy mean?
That every species has what it needs to thrive.
Okay, great. So it could mean keeping, helping the native plant and animal species, maybe restoring native species that have left. It could mean a lot of different things. So what kinds of information would you as a land manager need to do your job well to meet that goal? To keep your oak woodland healthy, what do you need to know?
Well, you need to know what's there now. What's growing there right now.
Great, so you need a starting point. What else do you need to know?
What's native and what's not.
Okay, great. So what species you want to be there?
How one species growing there will affect the other species.
Okay, some of the species interactions. Awesome.
What kind of human interaction there is?
Okay, yeah. So you'll probably want lots of different information, but you'll want to think about too the forces that have shaped the woodlands as they are today. Did you all realize that one of the most important forces in oak woodlands is fire? What do you need to know about fire in the oak woodlands?
The fire history and frequency.
Okay.
The effect the fire has after it passes through.
Okay, awesome. What else?
Where the water is.
Where the water is?
Is there a creek? Is there a pond? Is it just groundwater?
Awesome. Yeah. So how often, how severe, how big, how variable, what season? Scientists call these things the fire regime. So how can you get the information on how often fires happen, how severe they are, how big they are? How can you get this information about the oak woodlands, both in the present day and in the past? Do you guys have any guesses how you might, if you hadn't already read your hands out, do you have any hypothetical guesses for how you might get this information?
I mean, I would assume even if I hadn't read it that people would record it in some way. Like there would be some record of a government body or a park service or something that would say this happened on this date.
Yeah, great. So
if I was talking to the kids, they'd say the same thing. We just go on the internet, it'll tell you.
yeah, awesome.
And
So yeah,
everything is known. It's all known. There's nothing unknown. It's all on the internet.
Yeah, great. So yeah, we can definitely Google search the fire history for the Northern California oak woodlands on the CAL FIRE website, and they have a really great resource. But that only goes back about 150 years. How might scientists guess about the fire regime of an area that's older than 150 years?
We can talk to elders that have been there.
Yeah.
You can look at tree rings and look for old record of damage that's recorded within them.
Yeah, awesome. Okay.
Also soil samples.
So then at this time, yeah. So at this time, then you just quickly go through a PowerPoint to set up what a fire regime is with your students. So just knowing that fire regimes kind of take place on a temporal and a spatial scale. So a single flame can last from seconds and be, you know, just from the size of a match to much larger. A fire event can last from days to weeks to months even, and they can take place over a whole region. And then the fire regime is kind of thinking about fire history on the scale of decades to centuries and looking at more of a regional size. So fire regime includes the extent of fires, the frequency, the magnitude, so intensity of severity. So how hot is it burning? How much of an impact is it having on the ecosystem, the plants, like how many of them are they killing? That's kind of the magnitude. The type and the season. So these are three different areas that have three different fire regimes in these pictures. So the top is the Pine Flats in the southeast, and they have fires almost annually, and they're really quick fires that burn at a low intensity, so not very hot, and they don't kill a lot of things. In the bottom left, there's the Sierra Nevada, and they have a fire regime of about every 10 to 20 years, maybe more depending on fire suppression. And they have a mixed severity. So in some areas, they'll be really hot, really intense. And then some areas, they'll kind of spread through more quickly. And these fires typically happen in the late summer, early fall. And then in the bottom right, we have another fire regime area, and that's the Pacific Northwest. And those fires happen every 100 to 200 years, and they tend to be really high severity fires that restart that succession cycle. And so the notes for how to present this PowerPoint is included in the PowerPoint. So I'm not just memorizing this, this is a teacher resource that includes the notes. So when thinking about investigating fire regimes, we're going to be thinking about mostly the oak woodlands in Northern California. There are many different kinds of oak woodlands in California. And so there's a few different sources of information that scientists use to learn about the historical fire regime of an area. One of them is the fire scars on trees. One of them is looking at the development of the plants and tree species in the area called post-fire succession, paleo-ecological evidence, so looking at sediments and lake beds, and then historical records. So in just a moment, I'm going to break you up into breakout rooms, and you're going to be meeting up with the people who have also learned about your the same fire regime source as you. So you're going to be looking into how well that source answers the questions of a fire regime, how the information is collected, and what the scientists learned from that source about the oak woodland fire regime. And so I'm actually just going to stop sharing for a second because that is how I have to do breakout rooms. And it'll take me just a second to create these rooms. Fine. So,
Allie, I have a comment on that map that you showed that I every time I see it, I have the same thing. The immediate reaction I have and everybody else I know has is, where am I on the map and what's the answer for me? It's a little frustrating. You simply can't read it.
okay.
Too
So
small.
try to find a map
and you
that's
can't
more
blow it
clear.
up. And where's Lake County? I can't even find it. And it's just, I mean, if you're just showing, well, it's a bunch of jumble and there's 1,000 answers, that's all I get from it. And everybody wants to know, where am I? I am here. And it's a little, and I spent all my time thinking about that instead of what I was supposed to be thinking about.
Okay, thank you. I'll include that I'll put some landmarks on that map so that it makes more sense.
And Allie, just so you know, I'm taking a few notes as we go through this, so I've got that down.
Okay, great. I'm almost ready to send you into your breakout room. Sorry about that.
Oh, we're being told to go to our room. I hate this part.
Okay. Let's see. Great. Okay.
How long will we have in our breakout rooms, Allie? I missed that. I'm sorry.
5 minutes.
Thank you.
5 minutes. All right.
Okay, we'll see you back. We'll call you back in. Why not put Karina in a room?
So we still have Terry and Karina, although I know their audio is not working, so I don't think they're able to, they can listen in, but they can't contribute, I think.
Yeah, so hopefully they should just be talking about some things about their source, and then they'll come back and share out about it.
So as far as I can see, Karina is still in the room with us right now.
Yeah, Karina, do you need any help joining your breakout room?
I can message her as well. Because as I say, I think maybe it's hard for
her. No word from Mio?
Oh, there you go. No word. I've tried. And I think my suggestion is that we still try and follow up and get a recorded session with her. As it is, our timing actually, we would have struggled to fit it in anyway. Mm-hmm. But let's try and follow up with her and get a recorded session that we share with the participants, and that would be valuable to add as a, right?
Yeah. And honestly, I kind of started to go a little slower because I was like, I just want to fill the 2 hours.
But I didn't feel like that. I haven't felt like there's been any part when it's been too slow.
Okay.
I'm just checking my email again. Yeah. I've been, you know, when you try and send those messages not sounding like panic, like, where are you? Trying to still be polite and maintain that.
Yeah.
Yeah. How was the process of moving people into breakout rooms?
It was good. I think, as it turned out, I wasn't sure because I'd never done it before. If I created the breakout rooms, if it would start sending them right away. But you can totally create them ahead of time.
Oh, that's good.
And
so
then
you could have done it when I was wondering the same thing, but your idea originally of doing it when I was speaking, you were then like, hang on a minute, if I do this now, am I going to send them all off in the middle of Hannah's thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can set up the breakout rooms and then just send them to them when you're ready.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah. But it didn't take too long to create.
No, it didn't take too long at all. It was fine.
Yeah, and I'll just give them probably like one more minute in there. Yeah, we are almost overtime now. So
Exactly. There you go. Yeah. And I'm still very keen to allow that follow-up with Mia because I think it was a crucial element for today. So we'll get it in there somehow.
I just sent out a message saying one more minute to them.
I see it.
Oh, cool.
Very organized. It's a shame that the co-host doesn't have the same opportunity to do breakout rooms, because I feel like I could have been more support to do that kind of thing. That duty goes with only the host. But never mind. Oh, so one thing, the end, I will try and remember to say this, but I don't think I can launch the poll.
Okay. I'll just make you host again.
Yeah, because this is the only bit you needed. Well, once you finish doing this, because I don't know what happens if you, well, I guess that would be all right. Yeah, you can make me host again.
Yeah, after I close these rooms, I'll make you host again.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. My cat's actually been quite good. She hasn't meowed too much. Hi, welcome back.
We're back.
Great.
So we had an immediate realization. I love these things. We had no idea what our assignment was. Zero. So that was
okay.
weak. I mean, literally, we said to ourselves, okay, what are we supposed to be doing? Don't know.
A little, like I heard you say.
Was I not listening, or I didn't get it very good? So.
Well, this is a good thing to be practicing with a group of educator adults, right? And then we can.
So we had some idea that we were supposed to see whether the historical records answered those questions, maybe. But we weren't quite sure what we were supposed to do. So that's what we had a great discussion about where we were from. I used to live near Oakland and the music studio there. We had a great time.
Oh, good.
So it was a realistic thing that what a middle school student would be doing, actually.
Yeah, so sorry for any confusion about what to do in your group. So the idea, my poorly executed idea, was just to have you talk about your specific information source. And so to talk about how well that source answers the question of a fire regime, including how big, how severe, how variable, what season. So how well does your information source tell us about fire regimes? How do scientists or historians collect that information? And what they learned about the fire regime from your source.
Well, because I know about Clear Lake, and I know that a normal shallow lake would have filled in already and have been a meadow, but the fact that it hasn't is because there's a trapdoor fault in the north part of the lake, and it's been falling at exactly the same rate it's been silting up for the last 250 to 300 to 400,000 years. That's why they can take these cores in Clear Lake and actually see what's happened.
Yeah.
So I was, because I know that about Clear Lake, because of my other studies, being a person who's interested, I was able to share that. So we had a pretty good, for the paleoecological record, it would really do good for us here to be able to tell, not where the fire was, but there was a big fire because look at all the ash at this level.
Mm-hmm.
Because it just kept silting, and it never filled up and became a meadow.
Great. So your information source then tells you when in time a fire took place and maybe how big it was based on how much ash.
Right.
And you know that it's in the watershed for your
it's in the watershed.
lake. But it might not tell you what season.
No, it probably would. Well, if there was pollen, because there's everything there. So they might be able to tell us what season and what else is in the core, because apparently they can go down 150, 250,000 years and they can still find the core all the way down. So in Clear Lake, I can't speak for any other lake, but in Clear Lake, you can really know a lot because it's been continuous and there
Great.
hasn't been a break.
Great. Does someone else from another information source just want to quickly point out maybe like one thing about their information source?
Yeah, the tree fire scars, really useful for primarily the last few centuries, or up until really the gold rush, and then the miners cut out most of the big oaks, but they're using tree rings, and when a fire comes through and it disturbs the area, it might kill part of that tree or it'll leave a scar on that tree. So we can measure intensity. However, we can't tell if there's just little tiny grass fires blowing through real fast, because they're not going to leave behind the evidence within a tree scar. But they are able to pinpoint almost to the year, and the frequency, just how often these natural occurring fires or cultural burns in some cases were coming through the areas.
Great. So that fire scars, and yeah, with even with like, just to give you all a little bit of background, like even scientists within Oak Woodlands have a lot of debate about the fire history of the Oak Woodlands, because so many of the fires were of such low intensity that they didn't leave as much scarring information as in other ecosystems. So it's kind of a trickier puzzle to put together than some other areas. Does anyone want to share something that they learned about post-fire succession? Thinking about like looking at how the Oak Woodlands look now to piece together how fire might have impacted them in the past?
Well,
Yeah, this is Mark.
Go ahead.
This is Mark Alley. Yeah, looking at the stand of trees post-fire will give you some idea about the frequency. If you have a lot of the same age trees, you can infer that there was a very intense fire that killed all the old growth, and then you just have a bunch of resprouting with the same age trees. But if you have a mosaic pattern with young, middle-aged, and old growth trees, then you can tell that there's a more regular fire regime where it wasn't so intense that it killed everything. So that's something about looking at the stand of what's there now can give you some idea about the fire regime and frequency.
Awesome, thank you so much, Mark. And maybe
on the historical records, this is a great summary of sort of what we've been able to figure out about what the native peoples did and use burns. One thing that's not here that might be helpful is the descriptions of the European settlers when they first saw it. And there's a lot of that there. It's not here, but it looked like a park to them. And of course, they figured it was all natural that way because there was nobody there. It never occurred to them that the people they were seeing had any effect on it at all. And their descriptions, though, really do describe what the effect was of all this burning, cultural burning, which isn't really here in the story, because they really have long descriptions of exactly what it looked like, which then would give you a real good picture of what the effect of these fires really were.
Yeah. So on that note, I was looking over that again today. I did change one of the quotes because it had just a bad. In the historical quote, it speaks in a way that I don't think that we should represent anymore. So I took that out, but also in looking through them again, I want to include more historical data on then how fire was used through the gold rush, and include some things up through present day. Now that we have all this information, you would discuss with your students how you think fire should be treated on the landscape today. Should we use it? Should we not use it in our goals for managing the landscape? And then as a follow-up, there's a handout in the document that we've created to have students read called A Fire History of the Oak Woodlands. And this kind of goes through every period of time, basically from when we have records of that, and have them read that, and then have another discussion to see what they learned from that document, and what they think, how they think the fire in the Oak Woodlands should be managed now. What do they think the current fire regime should look like? So I'm just going to keep plugging along because we only have 10 minutes left. So the next lesson is the phenomena in action, and virtually the best way that I could see doing this. So this is kind of the idea of having students really get hands-on learning, do something that impacts their community, share their knowledge, do a restoration project, do an outreach projects to their communities. So I could see, especially in the virtual times, doing like a letter writing campaign or that type of thing. But we'll talk a lot more about ideas for this and planning this on Thursday, because there's another phenomena in action in that in our next unit. And then the final lesson is just giving them a chance to kind of bring everything together. So in that lesson, students write either alone in a group, create a story play or skit about a fire in an oak woodland that includes several species and what happens to them. So this is kind of just a wrap-up lesson just to gain an understanding of what your students learned and give them a chance to synthesize that into a project.
Allie, I have a question about number 6. Because we work at Anderson Marsh State Historic Park, and we can't do a lot of things, but we did have a big planting of oak trees from oak acorns that fell off the big oak tree in the ranch house yard. And so is that the kind of thing we could do in terms of an outreach project where we could have kids continue to monitor or plant more or see how they're doing? I'm just curious to know if that's.
Yeah. So the idea of this lesson plan is definitely to get into those ecological projects. So monitoring the oaks success rate after you've planted them could be a really cool project.
Great.
Even possibly, if you realize after you planted them that maybe they're a little bit too thick, going in and thinking about like thinning some of the areas or pulling grasses around them that are out competing them.
Getting rid of teasel. Oh, yes.
Yeah, so any of those projects that really, so thinking about projects that either get them out in the landscape or, possibly even working in an area that has burned recently to assist with further fuels reduction or removing invasive plants that are growing in.
Great, because we work with a couple of different school districts in Lake County, and we have kids that come from kindergarten through high school to want to do field trips. And if we could get them somehow active with an actual lesson that the kindergartners could do this part of it and the third graders could do that part of it. It would be fabulous to sort of tie it all together as a Connaughton Unified School District whole activity or something.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful.
Right. I think that's a good point, that often these phenomena into action elements involve some kind of level of partnership. So a school partnering with a place like Anderson Valley Marsh or the Fire Safe Council, but we will cover it more on Thursday, but it's great to hear your experiences.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, so as we just said, we'll be going over a lot more of the trauma-informed education aspects, setting up your classroom for success on Friday. Thursday, we'll talk more about the phenomena in action. Thursday, we'll be going through the fire physics lessons. In the beginning of the day, we'll have a presentation from Dr. Kate Wilkin, and she will tell us a little bit more about fire in the Oak Woodlands and California's wildfire issues. But if you all have any other questions, comments, concerns, I just want to give a little bit of time for that. We'll have a big wrap-up session at the end of the week, but right now, Hannah, I'm going to make Hannah the host again.
And while you're doing that, Ali, I also wanted to mention to you guys, so we did miss having our speaker of the day, Mio Marufo, who is a member of the Eastern Pomo for Robinson Rancheria Band of Pomo Indians. I know that she was looking forward to speaking with you and something must have come up. So my intention is to pre-record with her some of the questions we were hoping to go through about cultural use of fire. I think it was a really important part of our understanding. So we will share that. It's a shame it won't be live, but we'll share that so you have that as another opportunity.
Thank you.
And I'm going to launch the poll now while you guys get on with the questions. We'd love to hear any questions you have.
Or comments. Anything you want to say about it. We're happy to.
I jumped in with mine already because it was just bubbling up for me so much.
Great.
About getting involved with because we see, like I say, we see a lot of different age kids from different schools, which is wonderful.
I have to admit that the thought of interacting with these wonderful children and fire at the same time is a little frightening. We have many children who come from, they're very, what's the popular politically, disadvantaged. And they act out. They're getting abused at home, and God knows what else is happening. And they are looking to sabotage what you're doing. And Jesus, there's, I mean, and the teachers, I'm working for a nonprofit that's running these things. The teachers simply do not select out these children because there's too much work. And they have to justify it. So everybody comes. And we get people, I mean, the thought of some of those children with fire just makes my blood run cold. So I mean, that's my emotional reaction to all this.
Yeah.
So I don't know where that fits into it, but boy.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll be talking about the fire physics lessons on Thursday. And so those are the ones where you are directly burning things, lighting things on fire. Definitely, I have to say, you know, depending on your group, if you have the ability to talk with teachers ahead of time, all of the lessons can be done as demonstrations as opposed to giving the students the tools for fire. I've done the lessons several times with many different groups, some of which the teachers were worried about, some of which the teachers were like, you're gonna have so much fun with these kids. So strike on box only matches combined with not giving them the box is a good start.
Yeah, it's good.
Depending on, you know, for some specific lessons, the size of the fire they create is kind of limited by what resources you give them. So it's definitely a very structured lesson. You know, setting up the ground rules ahead of time. We'll go through all those things on Thursday on the next class. But I've never had a problem with it, even with students that the teachers expressed concern to me about.
I have a question. Basically, you're dealing with, I was wondering whether the schools are okay with this. We're dealing with the state park system. The state park system is the most, how should I say this in a neutral way? Its feet are in cement. It is a very ponderous, slow-moving, risk-adverse organization.
Yeah.
And for me, the likelihood of them approving any sort of program involving fire at all in a state park is zero. So we would have to do some sort of very controlled demonstration thing anyhow, because there's no way, it's just the way they are. So
Henry, and I think we have a similar situation here, because we do field trips here at the university site, and equally the university is incredibly cautious, as is appropriate. But I think what you'll see from the physics lessons is obviously what we want to practice and show these students is how to be safe. And as soon as anybody exhibits behavior that's showing that that's not happening, they're not doing the exercises. And that normally is enough of a you know, the more they learn about being safe, the safer they're going to be. And as soon as they can't practice that, then it's stopped. So I think you'll see on Thursday how that looks. And then you choose what is appropriate and what you feel isn't. And of course, you'll have to consider what's appropriate and what is allowed at your site. I see we're in our last minute now. Thanks so much for you guys who voted. I think maybe there's still 1 or 2 folks to vote. So if you haven't voted, please do. It'd be great for our grant. It helps a lot to have this feedback. Ali, is there anything else that we need to mention in closing?
No. I just want to say another follow-up to your question, Henry. There's an article that I'll find and share with you all, and it kind of investigates the question of if having students use fire in a controlled experiment way in class is likely to increase their likelihood to play with fire safely at home. Oh, yeah. And so basically at the end, the lesson says, or the journal paper kind of concludes that if anything, it'll make their practices safer. It will discourage them from doing it on their own because they've had a chance for it more in, you know, a safe, structured setting. So I'll definitely search out that article and send it out to everyone.
Thank you.
Great.
And I can see us doing this more actually on a Saturday with parents involved in our park than an actual school field trip where we arrange in advance and students and parents come so that we have that, so the parents know what we're doing.
Or it's even something you may wish to share that fire physics series of lessons with the teacher to say that this is something they might want to try in the classroom themselves, and then they would come and see on your site. A lot of these cultural ecology lessons and ecology lessons are really great to see on a landscape level. So there's a few different ways. Well, I see it's 12 o'clock now. For anybody who has further questions, Ali and I will hang out if you want to hang out here, but I appreciate it's lunchtime. Thanks so much to all of you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again on Thursday at 10 a.m.